From a young age, I was quite the talker. I started talking when I was about a year old. I've looked back at many videos of me standing in my pigtails, blabbing away about who knows what. I always wanted to tell anybody who would listen about everything my young brain could process. Eventually, I started school. I did pretty well in school, if I say so myself. In elementary school, we didn't get A's, B's, C's. Instead, it was on a scale of 1 to 4. Around second grade, whenever we got back our report cards, I would have mostly 4 out of 4s, but at the bottom, where the teacher's notes go, it would say something like, very talkative, or needs to work on quiet listening. I remember sitting in parent-teacher conferences and my teacher telling my mom I was doing great work-wise. I always turned in my work on time and I did well on tests, but I just would not stop talking. Luckily, I've slowed down quite a bit since then, but I still use speech every day for many things. Almost everyone in this room uses speech on a daily basis to communicate ideas, connect with people, pass on information, express feelings, share thoughts, ask for assistance. The list goes on and on. We use speech so often, we don't even have to think about it. Take a moment to try and recall the number of times you've used speech for any reason at all today. You can't. You've used speech so much today, you can't begin to remember all those times, let alone count them. Now, I want you to imagine going an entire day without talking, 24 hours without the smallest use of speech. Sometimes on the first day of school, my teachers would have us do an icebreaker activity where we have to do a variety of tasks such as line up in alphabetical order or line up by birthday. But there was a catch. We were not allowed to talk. My class usually had such a hard time we cheated and whispered to each other. If my class couldn't handle it for 5 minutes, I doubt anybody could go an entire day. Every single person here would have a very difficult time. You wouldn't be able to have a conversation with your friends, order dinner from a restaurant, answer your teacher's questions. I could go on forever. Luckily, we're able to talk and use speech for all these things. But some people are not. Maybe they were born with a disability that impedes speech, or they acquired it later in life. How do they do all the things we do so easily through talking without being able to use speech? This is my sister Miranda. She's 16 years old. She loves to read, go on car rides, swim, and eat out with her family. Miranda has severe autism. She's nonverbal, which means she is unable to use speech. So, how does she communicate? She uses AAC. AAC is systems, strategies, or devices that help an individual communicate when they can't rely on speech. AAC stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. I know that's a lot of big words, so let's break it down. The first A, augmentative. Augment means to add to or supplement something, making it greater. Augmentative communication is when something is added to speech to help a person communicate. In other words, the user would use AAC alongside speech to get messages across. The second A stands for alternative. Alternative communication would completely replace speech. It's an alternate method of getting messages across. The user would fully rely on AAC to communicate. So AAC can either be used as well as speech, or it can be used on its own. Either way, it helps people communicate. There's a large variety of needs that AAC covers. Therefore, it comes in many different types. For example, my sister would need an AAC device that suits her needs. It would be different than someone with a higher or lower amount of abilities. AAC can be split into 2 main categories, unaided and aided. Unaided AAC uses nothing but an individual's own body. One common form of unaided AAC that most people are familiar with is sign language. Some other examples include body language, gestures, and facial expressions. On the other hand, aided AAC uses an outside tool or device. Aided systems can be either low-tech or high-tech. Low-tech AAC could be as simple as a paper and pencil or pointing to words and letters on a letterboard. There are even AAC flipbooks with letters and symbols. High-tech AAC systems use devices such as computers that talk when buttons are pressed. This form of AAC can be referred to as SGDs, or speech-generating devices. With today's technology, high-tech AAC has become much more accessible and affordable. There are even high-tech AAC apps that can be downloaded on an iPad. To summarize, AAC is either unaided and uses nothing but one's body, or aided, which uses an outside tool or device. Aided AAC is sorted into 2 categories, low-tech and high-tech. Miranda uses an aided high-tech device in the form of an app called TouchChat on her iPad. So when talking about AAC, we often hear a lot of the words speech and communication. To us, these words sound almost the same. Although they are closely connected, they have very different meanings. Speech refers to the action of actually producing speech through one's mouth. Hannah Tam, my sister's middle school SLP or speech language pathologist, says, when we think of speech, we think of the actual talking or verbalization. Like I mentioned before, most of us use speech quite often. Communication is a very broad category. The dictionary definition of communication is the successful conveying or sharing of ideas and feelings. Most of us achieve communication through speech, but that is not the only way. Communication can be achieved through AAC as well. I use speech to communicate ideas and connect with people and share information, and people like my sister use AAC. Some people shy away from introducing AAC to their students or loved ones because of a common myth that AAC slows down speech development. It is said that if an individual is introduced to AAC, they will stop attempts at learning natural speech. I started off my project with one main question: does AAC slow down speech development? I started researching and found that this myth is false. All sources led to the conclusion that AAC does not impede speech. In fact, in a study done by ASHA, or ASHA, the American Speech Language Hearing Association, 89% of people actually experienced an increase in speech when introduced to AAC. The other 11% showed no change, and no one showed a decrease. After doing my research, I came to the resolution that AAC does not impede speech. But later, I got to thinking, why are people so worried about speech? People are asking if AAC will stop speech, but isn't the main goal communication? Speech is one way of communicating, and I can see how people want that option, but communicating is the most important. It doesn't have to be done through speech. Although it has been proven that AAC does not impede speech, speech is not what we should be focused on. We should be focused on communication. Both AAC and speech lead to communication, which is the ultimate tool that everybody needs in life. Just because an individual can't use speech doesn't mean communication isn't possible. Thank you.